Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we are cracking open the pages of a truly grim, dark Gothic fable. Seriously, imagine the energy of a dark fantasy scholar carefully opening a forbidden grimoire. That's exactly the vibe we're going for here. We are stepping straight into a world that is just dripping with intense Nietzschean philosophy, exploring a text known as The Crimson Synthesis, Harvest of the Red Spectre. It's an incredibly rich, evocative piece that challenges our very notions of reality, logic, and existence itself. We're going to break down the complex existential themes woven into this story, and I'm absolutely thrilled to guide you through this dark philosophical labyrinth. Let's dive in.
Right out of the gate, listen to this visceral warning. I wear the plague doctor's mask to filter the stench of your unexamined ugliness. I mean, wow, that is quite the hook, isn't it? It pulls us directly into the chaotic human marketplace of this fable, which is this place just buzzing with merchants and seekers of knowledge. But this marketplace is about to be interrupted. It's about to be judged. This quote really sets the stage for a descent, the arrival of a terrifying, mythic presence that views humanity's so-called achievements not with awe, but with absolute disgust.
So, who exactly is speaking those chilling words? Well, it's the Crimson Reaper. Now, this isn't your traditional, everyday Grim Reaper with a scythe. In the context of this synthesis, the Crimson Reaper represents the superego and what the text calls the Age of Negation. When this Reaper descends into the marketplace, he acts as the ultimate existential filter for humanity. His arrival kicks off a complete intellectual deconstruction, essentially tearing down all of human striving, which leads ultimately to the final erasure of the soul. Think of him as the ultimate cosmic auditor, and trust me, he has come to collect.
Okay, moving to part 1, The Sovereign Harvest, synthesizing the 6 parables of the Reaper. The Reaper's methodical deconstruction happens in stages, laid out across these 6 parables. First, he attacks our logic and ambition. Through the razor tribunal and gilded bankruptcy, he uses these razor-sharp queries to prove that human reason isn't a beacon of light, it's actually just a self-referential trap. Then we get into the burden of self. The calcifying spine parable reveals that every seeker carries this microscopic shadow of unacknowledged trauma, and it grows until it literally crushes them. And finally, we reach the final erasure, where the final transaction and atavistic fire outline the absolute void that's waiting at the very end of his judgment.
That brings us to part 2, the prison of human logic, also known as the architecture of stasis. To really ground this in existentialist philosophy, we have to talk about the concept of the Faustian Drang. See, the merchants in the fables marketplace, they accumulate wealth through petty certainties and forbidden knowledge. But the Reaper just points his scythe at this wealth and reveals it is merely nihil, the dark nectar of meaninglessness. The Faustian Drang, this relentless drive for mastery we all have, is exposed as a parasitic obsession. Our own intellect becomes a beautifully tailored prison where you basically serve as your own executioner. The merchants think they are feasting on knowledge, but the text brutally describes it as a dinner party where the guests are the only thing on the menu, leading directly to systemic spiritual bankruptcy.
Next up, part 3, Free Will versus Existential Determinism, or the Tragic Comic Pantomime. This is where the philosophical divide gets really intense. On one side, we have humanity's desperate assertions of free will, but the source material ruthlessly describes these assertions as merely the frantic, amusing choreography of a jester performing for a completely indifferent universe. We think we're making choices, right? But we are just dancing a scripted jig. Now contrast that illusion with the terrifying reality of existential determinism, represented here by the living ink. When the Reaper initiates the final spill, this living ink drowns the marketplace, completely erasing the ledger of every single life. It's a stark, uncompromising view that our something is really just a temporary stain on the eternal nothing.
Understanding this ultimate endgame brings us to a crucial concept, the Untergang. It means the ultimate destruction and downfall. Now, you might assume the Reaper wears that plague doctor's mask to protect himself from the stench of humanity, right? But the text reveals a massive twist. The mask actually protects the world from him. It shields reality from the atavistic fire of his gaze, which is the raw will of the Age of Negation. This fire actively demands the Untergang of all human structures. It literally sets the cosmic puppet strings ablaze, putting an end to the tragic, comic pantomime of our existence once and for all.
But how does this all play out on an individual level? Well, the parable of the sun-cold gaze explains exactly how the Reaper's crimson eyes judge a soul. For the noble soul, these eyes actually act as a mirror, reflecting their profound internal struggle and their becoming. However, for the ignoble soul, this exact same gaze is experienced as incredibly heavy weights, physically sinking them down into the permanent oblivion of the living ink. It's such a fascinating look at how existential judgment is completely subjective to the spiritual fortitude of the individual.
Which leads us to part 4, the superego's final verdict, the diatribe of the Red Spectre.
The Reaper's words in this section just cut right to the bone. He says, "You believed your logical sanctuaries were fortresses, yet I have shown you that your reason is but a beautifully tailored prison, where you serve as your own executioner." This perfectly encapsulates the existentialist critique of hyperrationality. Think about it. The very logical structures we build to protect ourselves and make sense of the world, they're actually defense mechanisms. They disconnect our consciousness from objective reality, basically ensuring that we lock ourselves away from the truth.
And he doesn't stop there. He continues his merciless deconstruction, stating, "Your fierce, desperate assertions of free will were merely the frantic, amusing choreography of a jester performing for an indifferent universe." He completely exposes this human pursuit of knowledge as a parasitic obsession. It provided the very fuel for our own destruction. Our so-called sovereign existence is revealed to be a tragic, comic lie taking place in a marketplace that is, in the end, nothing more than a monument to universal futility.
Then we hit the terrifying conclusion of the diatribe. There is no escape through hyperanalysis. They are merely the weights of existential determinism that ensure you sink deeper into the ink. The Reaper summons the atavistic fire, and human history is exposed as just a fleeting, tiny ripple in the heart of negation. The intellectual dismantling is completely done. All our analyzing, all our grand philosophies, they don't save us. In fact, they are the very weights that drag us down in the silent return to absolute nothing.
Finally, Part 5, the final spill, the return to the void.
The text describes a moment of profound, eerie stillness here. The uncanny has officially arrived. The Reaper's scythe has acted as the final punctuation mark on the long, drawn-out sentence of human existence. The living ink completely covers the world, returning everything to the absolute void. There's no survival, no final trick up our sleeves. The tragic, comic pantomime of existence is simply over, and the scripted performance is ended once and for all.
Which leaves us with a pretty heavy, lingering thought. As the living ink covers the world and that silence of the void sets in, we're really forced to look at our own logical sanctuaries. Are our fiercely guarded beliefs and ambitions truly pathways to freedom? Or are they just the beautifully tailored prisons of our own unexamined ugliness? This fable forces us to confront the uncomfortable shadow of our own Faustian drang. I really hope this explainer sparked your curiosity and maybe pushed you to explore more dark existential philosophy on your own. Until next time, keep examining those sanctuaries.